Zoom, and it'll be aired on channel 20 and 20.1 POG and the Bardstown YouTube channel. So call the meeting to order. I'm going to probably jump around on some things just to kind of make the meeting, I think, run maybe a little bit better. I think we have Samantha Brady, the executive director from the Nelson County Tourist Commission. Sam, are you with us?
I'm here.
All right. If you don't mind, we've got your budget to go over tonight, and I'm hearing a whole lot of background noise, so some people might have to mute if you don't mind. But anyhow, Sam, I know fiscal court, I believe, approved your budget on their end last week, and if you would like to give any highlights on this to the council members, or if they have any questions before we take it up for a vote.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. First off, I want to say that we had to, you'll notice that we had to cut our budget tremendously this year, as many people are doing all around us. Businesses are all facing the same thing, and we're no different than that. Because we're quasi-governmental, we were not able to get any of the additional funds through the state or anything like that. So we kind of had to shrink it. However, the good news is that all indications point to us as a small community returning a lot faster than most. The larger cities are going to see, and we get that data from Google Analytics and all our marketing partners that tell us that all indications point to smaller cities are the ones that people are going back to first. And one of the first things they want to do is go out to eat. And so our restaurants can be happy to hear that. And so we're glad to hear that. We cut the budget by more than $389,000. And you will find that most of that is in marketing. However, I want to note any marketing, that's just because mostly our budget is made up of marketing, because that's what we do to promote Bardstown. And so if our estimated totals come out to be more, that's where that money will be earmarked, is in marketing. So we just had to be as conservative as possible, prepare for the worst, and hope for the best. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I see where you're, you're forecasting your declines, August, September, October, November, so forth, which is what we've done the same thing with our tax revenue from occupational license fees and the other taxes. So kind of a similar situation, not as drastic as you have, but I think that was a proper way to forecast the decline. I would think you are being pretty conservative here with that big hit.
We're being pretty conservative. I think more conservative on the restaurant tax. We found that the restaurant, it seems like it's coming back a little bit faster. Of course, we're always a month behind seeing those numbers, but we're finding that that's coming back a little faster. However, the hotels are suffering. The hotels are at about 85% decline from last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did any of the council members have any questions of Samantha? Yeah, I think Samantha, I've been hearing locally, as well as I talked to one major hotel chain operator last weekend, said that they own several all around the country, that their occupancy rate was 13% in April. So that just tells you what kind of hit they're taking. So
when they tell everybody to stay at home, when you tell everybody to stay at home, it's what do you know, unless you live in a motel, you're not going to a motel.
Can I say something, Samantha? I've noticed just around town, it seems like that the Airbnbs are being used more? Is that okay to say that, you think?
I would say maybe you might be seeing a little bit more of that. And then also, in addition to that, this last week, we have definitely seen an increase. So we're really happy to say that we see an increase. And the things that we need to remember during this time is we want to bring those visitors back, but we want to bring them back safely in a safe environment, because that's what they're looking at. They're looking online to see, are we a safe community? And we've done a really fantastic job of that, thanks to the mayor and the judge and economic development. We've done a really fantastic job of that. We continue to do that, because the way that will be policed and what they're saying will be online. People will leave reviews and say that they don't feel safe, or they didn't feel like they wanted to eat at that place because they weren't taking the proper precautions. But I think we're doing all those right things.
Good.
All right. Any other questions of Samantha? If not, I would ask for a motion to approve the fiscal year 21 budget of the Bardstown Nelson County Tourist Commission as presented.
So moved, Mayor.
A motion by Councilwoman Hart. Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
Second, Mayor.
Second by Councilman Hibbs. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. We'll start with Councilman Hibbs,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hart,
Aye.
Councilman Buckman,
Aye.
Councilman Williams,
Aye.
Councilman Shekels,
Aye.
and Councilman Domes.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's carried. Thank you, Samantha. I got you on early so you wouldn't have to stay for us going through our budget. It's going to take a long time.
Thank you.
And thanks for the good job y'all are doing in this difficult situation.
Ditto.
All right, thanks. All right, we're going to move on then to the Henrytown Garden District sign. I don't know if you all remember, Debbie Abels came to us last year, I think, and talked to us about all the good things that are going on in the Henrytown district of Bardstown, and how the homeowners have gotten together and developed this Henrytown Pride and Garden District effort. And so they have come to Rashay and I and said they would like, they would pay for this sign to be hung on the new sign that we have up there near Arby's on, I think that's Dartery, I believe. And
Halstead.
Halstead, yeah, I'm sorry.
Halstead.
So if you can see, right now you see the new community park signs already up, and they typically will hang the concert sign up on the day of the concert. So this will just show how, by adding this Henrytown Pride sign, how it'll look. So they're gonna pay for it, and we'll hang it for them if you all think that would be appropriate. I told her Rashay and I don't see any problem. We just wanted you all to take a look at it and get your all's feedback.
Do we know how much it cost, Mayor?
I do not know, but Debbie volunteered that her group was going to pay for it, and we would just put it up on our sign.
Now, Mayor, are they just paying for their section of it, the garden section, or are they paying for all of it?
No, the other sign is already up. The new sign's already up. They're just paying for the garden section.
Okay.
So
Is anyone having a problem with their sheriff's point kicking in and out?
Yes. On that item there, every time I do that garden center, it goes off. That garden.
Okay, I thought it was just mine, but I thought it was just my box, but I guess.
Mine's doing it too,
Yeah,
Councilman Sheriff.
mine is also. Mayor, I wanted to say that the sign looks nice.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't think, this is not something that needs a formal vote, but I think it's a great effort on the
Mayor-
part of.
Mayor, it actually in the sign ordinance does require that a group sign like this be approved by the council. So I do
Alright.
think we probably would need to vote on it.
That's why we got you on this meeting. Audrey.
And that being said, obviously most signs are just approved by Roche, but this specific sort of sign is required to be taken up with the council. And I think it meets all the other criteria so long as the council is comfortable with it.
All right, my brother
Mayor, if
always
I'm in
used to-
order,
my brother used to always tell me I try to practice law too much just because. Yes, go ahead, Councilman Williams.
if I'm in order, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Henrytown Garden District sign.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Williams,
I'll second that, Mayor.
second by Councilman Buckman. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same motion's carried then. Thank you. Thank you, Audrey, for catching that. All right, next item on the agenda is the recycling center. I'll just report that here at City Hall, we are getting bombarded with phone calls about when's the recycling center going to open and so forth. And I think if you noticed over the weekend, there was a story in the Kentucky Standard, and I wasn't aware that that story, they didn't ask me for any comments. So I wasn't aware of the story that was in the works. But anyhow, last week, I did get a call from the Guthrie Center. They are experiencing the same thing, that many people are calling them asking about when the recycling center was going to open. And Rick McKay, the CEO of the Guthrie Center, has been in contact with Dan Simpson, who's the CEO of Communicare. And as you know, the employees are all adults with special needs, and the governor's orders has still got all these workshops closed. Therefore, the employees and traditional employees that help Bobby, the only full-time city employee that we have working there, are not at work. And Dan is not sure when that might change. So in my conversation with Mr. McKay, he stated that if they could get a grant to pay for about 2 months worth of salaries, for which I think would be only part-time, that that would probably be enough to allow them to open the recycling center back up. So we did some checking with these funds that we received from the state that are earmarked for COVID-related expenditures. And Mr. McKay asked him to put together a budget. He said with 3 employees for about a 9-week period, which would be a little over 2 months, it would come in right at about $10,000 for salary and benefits and so forth. We asked Department for Local Government for a interpretation of the rules, if we could make a donation from these funds directly to the Guthrie Center, because the COVID-19 has resulted in the recycling center being shut down. And to some degrees, it is a health issue because people can't recycle and get rid of their waste like they normally do. And they said we could do that. So we had also asked them whether we could hire part-time people through the city and pay them out of these funds, and that was not a permissible use of those funds. So I would like to ask you all if you all would consider using $10,000 of those funds towards this endeavor to get the recycling plant open. Rick's discussion with Dan Simpson has said that they feel like within 2 months that these employees would be able to go back to work. So hopefully this would kind of be a bridge to get the recycling center back open during the interim. So I'd be happy to talk about this or answer any questions.
Did he give you a amount about how much that would cost? We would be taking those funds, how much those funds needed to be spent for that?
he
Did he
said
give you a number?
for 3 to 4 employees, and these employees don't make, much more than minimum wage. It feels like 3 probably would get it done, maybe 4, to help Bobby. Of course, Bobby's still been collecting all the cardboard all along, but not the regular recyclables. And he said that would last approximately 9 weeks. So you have a little over 2 months worth of employment that these funds could provide. Just so you know, it's going to come up in a later discussion. We got a $10,000 donation from another business person that came in just recently that wants to support the COVID-19 efforts on our part. And so I spoke to him today and told him that I was also going to propose another small business grant program. And he said, well, I would like my this money to go to the grant program. And I said, well, if you do that, then that frees up $10,000 that we might be using for that grant program now can be used for this recycling program. And he said his business is really would like to see the recycling open. So he said, I hope you get that done. So we do have 10,000 that came in that's going to supplement these funds from the state towards a small grant program. So it does free up $10,000 for this effort, if you look at it that way.
$10,000 might take 3 months. Might take a couple of months at those salaries of part-time help at the Guthrie Opportunity Center, or close to it, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, he said he could probably make it go as much as 9 weeks, which is a little over 2 months. With these
I mean,
3
that
employees.
$10,000 grant that you get possibly would almost cover that, wouldn't you think?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. They need this grant in order to open it. Otherwise, the Guthrie Center can't. See, typically Communicare pays the wages for these people, but they're closed down. So the Guthrie Center has got employees that already have been helping them do the country garden and the greenhouse. Well, they're now finishing up with that work. They'll be closing that down shortly for the summer. It won't reopen till fall. So these people can move over and start working in that capacity in the recycling center.
Mayor, and this may be a question that Jessica could help me out with, but couldn't we also justify some of that by saying that the additional load that we're putting, since we can't recycle, I mean, there's a lot of additional load that we're putting to the landfill. Does that increase the city's costs, the extra load that we're putting on the landfill right now?
Yes, in theory, that would be the case. If their overall people's residential trash is just more. I don't have the numbers. I think the first several weeks of COVID, when everybody was home, I think that we really saw that be the case. But I would really need to go back and kind of check the numbers to see if that's transferring into more tipping fees. I don't know if that's being offset by a lack of some of the commercial dumpsters have been backed down. So they'll maybe, instead of being emptied 3 times a week, they may be only once a week or something like that. So we're seeing some go down. So I would really want to kind of go back, follow up with Ben and check our actual tipping costs. But for sure, we're seeing more cardboard and dumpsters right now.
Well, I would just think that it would help us, as far as the city, if we're considering using these funds to help with the recycling center opening. I would think that would help us in that respect also.
I would have to agree, David, that it's got to help some, because I'm hearing from people that are calling and they've got piles and piles of stuff also waiting, and if they don't get to move it pretty soon, that's going to end up being heavy loads of newspaper and a whole lot of plastic and a whole lot of aluminum. It's going to end up going sooner or later, because I've had people tell me their garages are full right now.
Absolutely.
If we can't tell them we can't open for another 2 months at the minimum, that's probably going to change some people's recycling habits.
Oh, for sure.
Has anybody got any other comments or questions on this? I am going to ask for a motion then to use some of these funds. Aaron has checked into this. Aaron, would you want to make any comments on that?
No, I think you've covered it. I was just looking at our solid waste fees with the Nelson County Fiscal Court, and they did go up in March and April. They've stepped back down a little bit here in for May, but I think you've covered it. As long as we specify this as a grant going to the Guthrie Center, it's permissible under the CARES Act rules.
All right, thank you, Aaron. If there's not any other questions, then I would ask for a motion then to approve a grant for the Guthrie Opportunity Center for the purpose of hiring employees to be used in the recycling center and get the recycling center open until such time as either the funds run out or the community care employees return to work.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion that Councilman Dones. Is there a second?
Sir, I'll second, sir. I'll second, Mayor.
Councilman Hibbs, I believe, on the second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you, guys. All right, another signage item on the agenda. Chief Manually, if you're on the call, would you talk us through? It looks like you've got a sample of 2 signs to go on your new building, just 2 different ways.
Yes, sir. This is keeping with the same type of sign of the fire station at 5th and Broadway. Willie Edlin's sign had mocked this up for me. If you're looking at your pictures, picture number 1 and number 3 are as you're eastbound on John Rowan, looking at the building. And then 2 and 4 are actually on John Rowan as you're going past the building. That side, number 3 and 1, you can see from North Salem Drive. So this is really going to stand out. And at this time, I'm recommending that we only do the one side. And I've looked at it several times from John Rowan. When you're right near the building, and I don't believe you're really going to be able to see it. Coming westbound on John Rowan, there's some trees that belong to the state that are up there on their property that would be blocking that corner. I've reached out to them to see if possibly we could take those down, and they have not gotten back with me. So if the council likes this type of signage, which I've gotten with Rochelle on it, she said she loved it. I would like to go with number 3 for $1,800. And I do have it in the budget under 5320 that we're using a lot of that money on this current budget for the new firehouse stuff. So I was just wanting to get the council's okay if they liked it that way.
Chief, will you also have another sign out near the highway at some point, like where the old Newcomb sign was, perhaps?
At some point in time, we would like to do that. We have reached out. Assistant Chief Spalding has talked to some company here in town about possibility of cutting away some of that rock wall. One, for our safety as we come out, because cars westbound can't really see you until they get up to you there. So once that's done, yes, we would like to address some type of sign down there.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other questions of Chief? So this would be where you put in the new door on the west side of the new fire station number 1, right?
Yes, sir. So
you'll see it as you're traveling east better on John Rowan.
Correct. You'll see it probably about Dairy Queen. Then, of course, as closer you get, you'll be able to read it. It will stand out.
All right.
Chief,
Anyone have
whatever
any
it's
other-
worth, I really like the number 3 over the number 1 also. I like the fact that the lettering's at the top and you can see it's your logo probably is not very you probably can't see it that well from the street.
Right. Yeah. From the road, people are going to see the patch, but they're not really going to know what it says. So that's why I like the letters at the top
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, I think it looks nice too.
Thank you.
I would agree with that as well, Chief.
Thank you.
I agree also, Chief. I think the line of sight with the verbiage above the actual crest is a lot better.
Thank you, Coach.
I agree with
All
number
right.
3 as well, Chief.
Okay, well, I'll just ask them for a motion to approve the recommendation of Chief Manley for sample number 3 as proposed for the new signage on Fire Station 1.
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Dones. Is there a second?
Second,
second
Mayor.
Second by Councilman Williams. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we have some fireworks permits, getting to be that time of year. We have the Bloomfield Church of God, which is going to have theirs they typically have theirs, it looks like one at Burger King and one at Walmart, June 22nd through July 7th. I'd ask for a motion to approve the request from the Bloomfield Church of God for their fireworks permit.
So move, Mayor.
That Councilman Buckman,
Yes, sir. Yes.
is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Councilman Hibbs, second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Then the second one is for St. Catherine Academy. They are going to have theirs at O'Brien's Farm Equipment. That's located out on New Haven Road or 31 East South. They have one permit request. Father Hardesty from St. Catherine Parish is requesting that permit. I need a motion to approve.
So move, Mayor.
Okay, motion by Councilman Williams. Is there a second?
I'll second, sir.
Second by
Joe.
Councilman Buckman. Any other
Yes.
discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Thank you. Item number 5 on our agenda is our minutes from our meeting last week. If there's no corrections or additions, we'll approve them by unanimous consent. It was basically our work section, but we did have the resolution for the CARES Act. All right, unless there's no corrections or additions, we'll approve them by unanimous consent. Thank you. We have cemetery deeds, Ron and Carol Elliott, purchase of one grave site. We can approve them by unanimous consent. All right, then we'll move to number 7 on our agenda, which is construction inspection proposal for the John Rowan sidewalk improvements. And I'll ask Jessica to talk us through this and why this is needed and so forth.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is, as you said, a proposal to perform construction inspection activities and duties during the John Rowan Boulevard Sidewalk Improvement Project along Highway 245. As the community knows, this is actually a TAP grant project. It's an 80-20, 20% is matched by the city of Bardstown. Originally, we had planned to have our staff engineer, Dylan Durbin, do the site inspection, performing the concrete testing, and kind of monitor the progress of the contractor as we went. But due to the fact that this project was bid 30 days ago and we still have not been able to award a contract just yet and get started, I'm having 4 other projects getting started all at once. So our game plan is needing to be reevaluated, and it was just going to tax our staff too much to try to perform that solely on our own. So we are still providing and performing the construction management duties, tracking all the payroll, all of the expenses, funneling all of that from the contractor and back through the appropriate organizations and so forth. So we're still doing those tasks, as well as our public works doing the excavation work and placing of stone. So again, reached out to QK4 and they provided us this proposal, and this is a very reasonable cost. And I think it's going to allow us to do a good job and keep an eye on the other projects that we have going on in town as well.
Yeah, I know. Would this be for assuming both phases, like, or one from 62 all the way over to either Chambers or Paget? Or would this be for-
They've basically got an approximate 13-week time allotted in here to 520 hours. Obviously, if they don't use all of that time, say if we don't get authorization to use phase 2 funds to do the last alternate B or alternate 2, I believe it is, then this could be less. Because again, the overall project timeline is they have a completion time of November the 1st. So this was an estimation on how many hours they were going to utilize. So we'll revisit this if there's something that comes up that becomes more complicated. But again, this is contributed whether we were doing that time or we're paying it as a consultant into that. This will count towards our 20% match.
Okay.
So Jessica, is this going to fit into what we budgeted for this?
Yes, yes.
But wasn't the other, we would use our people before, correct? As for the right?
Well, but see, keep in mind that I was having to track our time and charge that off to the project as our 20% match, what we're payrolling him to, what we were paying our employee. That's money we were having to pay. He can't be in 2 places at once. So I'm still able to charge this time off, whether it's us paying our staff engineer or if we're paying QK4. So we're just being more productive with the money.
Yeah. I'm all in favor of that. I really like to see that project once it starts to keep going. I've already stated that. Yeah. So good. I'm fine with that.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, Jessica's been working awful hard about getting this phase 2 nailed down, and we feel like we're close, hopefully, but we were far away from phase 1 this time last year, so we're at least got that in the works. So
exactly,
I feel good that we'll get this other phase money appropriated, hopefully, and get both phase 1 and 2 done in that between now and November. But I think Jessica's correct. You know, if we don't hire these people, we'll have to have her and Dylan and Ben spending a lot of time overseeing these. And as you all went through the budget, you know, we've got about $12 million worth of projects scheduled for next year. And that's all in Jessica and Dylan and Ben and some of the other plant operators' laps. So we've got a lot on our plate. So I think this would be money well spent.
Can I ask a quick question? Jessica,
Yes,
is this Bardstown Robbie Martin that signed the letter?
Yes, it is.
That's good. Yeah, hometown guy. Good.
Yes, and he's very familiar with this project, and he's been putting in a lot of time, I think, just on his own, trying to help us get moving on this project. And again, we had our pre-construction meeting yesterday, and with the state, the contractor, and Robbie Martin, and the individual that they're going to have being an inspector on the project with QK4. Again, I got an email from Kim Tompkins just this afternoon. I was asking, have you been able to get us the paperwork to authorize this contractor to start working? Because unfortunately, he's still not, he doesn't have a contract yet, because the feds and the KYTC folks, they've not quite moved to that step of authorizing us to award. So we've done everything on our end, to try to escalate this or move this along. But again, we reached out yesterday, probably 2 or 3 times. I went again today and submitted all of our pre-construction meeting minutes and the checklist of all of our required documents and said, okay, we're ready to go. We just need your go ahead, because we're running out of time. We only get the benefit of doing a full lane closure and extended working hours while school is out. So as soon as school goes back in, we're back to having to take down the traffic control at the end of each workday and down to a 9 to 3 work time, which is drastically going to impact what the contractor is going to be able to do. So at this point, I'm really hoping we can get moving. And again, I think it's good. And if we didn't hire QK4 to help us with the inspection on this project, I was going to need to reach out and likely get additional help or inspection help on another project that we were already planning to do our own inspection and oversight for. Again, we're doing that to try to save money when we do it in-house, when we don't have an outside engineer doing the construction administration and resident inspection services. So we're still doing the construction administration for this work, but we're asking for help on this inspection stuff.
I'm sure Robbie will do a good job for us.
Well, if you
I'm sure
remember, he was the, I think, engineer in charge of our downtown Main Street renovation project back in 2010. And they did a great job of keeping that project going with as little impact as possible on traffic and so forth. So I think they'll do a great job on this. So if I could, I'd like to ask for a motion, unless there's any more questions of Jessica, to approve the proposal from QK4 to provide the inspection services for the sidewalk project on from 62 on Highway 245 on a per hour basis up to $33,800. We may not use that much if they don't do the 13 full weeks of inspection. But
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilman Hibbs. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
All right, second by Councilwoman Hart. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. All right, I'd like to call on Aaron Bowles, our CFO, to give us our May financial report and let you all ask any questions.
All right, thank you, Mayor. May was a pretty good month. If you guys have time, you can pull up that attachment there in SharePoint. The general fund revenue came in this month at just over $1 million. Of that million, $865,000, 79% was from our occupational license fee revenue. If you remember, we extended the quarterly filers out to May 31st instead of the April deadline. So that kind of is part of that swing, that larger sum of money coming in during the month of May. Of that $865,000, $36,000 was net profits tax revenue. So that's relatively light for this time of year. So I'm hoping that our estimates of what's going to come in after the end of this fiscal year is going to be on point, and next year will look a lot better in the net profits category. Other revenue received in the general fund was $63,000 in donations that were related to the relief project. We had some come in for phase one of the grant money that we sent out, and then in phase two, some people or businesses helped us to purchase all the face masks that we're currently selling. Year-to-date revenue, $10.1 million, or 81% of a $12.4 million budget on the general fund. Going into the combined utilities, revenue for this month was $2.9 million. Of that, 93%, or 2.7, was attributed to just general service charges, electric, water, sewer, cable, and internet service charges. Year to date, our revenue is sitting about 71% of budget, $36.8 million of 51.5 budgeted. Moving down into the expenses, the general fund saw expenditures increase of just over $1 million, just right on par with revenue. Of that $1 million, salaries accounted for $412,000. $189,000 was for the expenses incurred on the COVID relief projects. We gave out $121,750 in small business relief grants throughout the month of May. We used $66,000 to purchase face masks, and then we had some construction costs related to the blessing boxes. Total year-to-date expenditures on the general fund were $9.4 million of an $11.7 million budget. That's roughly 80%.
Can I ask Jessica a question here?
Yes,
Jessica, on the street paving, I see where, are we through with the street paving for the city? For streets in the city? Or
Yes,
you have?
we are. We are. And that last street, we are actually getting reimbursed from discretionary funds from the highway department for that, for about $39,000 for part of that. There was a piece of that we had postponed due to some utility work. So we came back and finished up our street list, and around $39,900 is being reimbursed. Should be before the end of the fiscal year. We sent that.
I had a couple of residents that were on Virginia Avenue that were doing a major complaining job on their street. I don't know if if they were on our list and got cut off, or if they were scheduled to be on the list next year or the next.
The city only maintains or has the right of way to the street just past Harriet Drive on Virginia, and that actually is on our list for this fiscal year. And we have forwarded over to the county engineer the remaining portion, because I think they had plans to do at least a portion of Virginia as well.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, I'll report that back to the concerned citizens.
Yeah, just to clarify what Bill asked, I think, Bill, what you meant was where we finished with this year's budgeted amount of street paving, because obviously fiscal year 21, starting July 1, there will be an extensive amount of paving done from that budgeted amount later this year.
Yeah,
well,
that's what
we were done with our actual list, but we have some money left because of some of the tonnages. We usually have 11% contingency, so we were actually had a little bit extra, so we're filling in with a couple of those streets that were on this year's list. We're filling in with the remaining revenues out of the current 7,300 in the next couple of weeks.
Oh,
So,
okay.
okay. Thank you, Jessica.
All right.
Yeah, there's about just under $30,000 left in the 7,300 street construction budget line item. So she's got a little bit to spend there.
Well, see if you can get that street on your priority list, please.
It's already on the list.
All right, thank
going
you. You're always one step ahead, Jessica.
We just rode, Dylan and I just did our evaluations last week, so riding on the roads.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, Aaron, you want to continue?
Yeah, last portion there, the combined utilities, year-to-date or month-to-date expenditures were $2.3 million. Of that 2.3, the electric purchase for resale was $557,000, which is down roughly $200,000 due to some businesses being closed throughout the community. We had $375,000 of capital expenditures for ongoing water and sewer projects. Year-to-date expenditures are $36.1 million, or 71% of a $50.7 million budget. Our cash balances increased $61,000, and our investments are steady, running about a 2.05% return rate. I'm working on a budget amendment for fiscal year 20, just to finalize the year. I'm going to hopefully have that for the next session. We'll review some things of all the changes that's happened in any revenue line items. Just looking back, it looks like our health insurance this year, we're over budget by $553,000, or we're running 154% of budget.
What was that line item?
Health insurance overall for the entire city. We're over budget by $553,000. That's every line item in every department that pays for health insurance.
I found this on the web.
So you, I guess that was because we were greatly under budgeted last year, I guess, has been the problem in the claims. We've had 3 really major claims, I think you told me, this year.
That's correct. That's correct. We were coming off of a really good year in fiscal year 19. So I don't think we were really prepared for what was going to happen.
Right. And that's just the result of claims, not so much. And it's just hard to predict.
Right.
If you're going to have 3 major claims in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, that affects your total spend, since we're self-insured.
That's correct.
All right. Anyone else have any other questions of Aaron on the May financial report? Thank you, Aaron. This is really, I think, really been a great addition to our getting this monthly report to our meetings the following month. All right, now we're going to go to, we have a first reading of our annual budget, which is B 2020-08, first reading ordinance. Would ask for someone to introduce that and have our city attorney read the summary.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to introduce a summary of ordinance number B 2020-08, the annual budget for the fiscal year July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021 for the city of Bardstown. And please ask our city attorney, Audrey Hayden, to read the summary.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Summary of ordinance number B 2020-08, annual budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. An ordinance adopting the city of Bardstown, Kentucky annual budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, estimating revenues and resources and appropriating funds for the operation of city government. Whereas an annual budget proposal and message has been prepared and delivered to the city council, and whereas the city council has received and reviewed the budget proposal and made desired modifications, now therefore be it ordained by the city of Bardstown, Commonwealth of Kentucky, Section 1, that the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021 is hereby adopted as follows, as set forth below. on the table that outlines all those numbers. Section 2, that any and all ordinances inconsistent with this ordinance are hereby repealed. And section 3, that this ordinance shall take effect July 1st, 2020 after its passage and publication as required by law. The summary was certified by Audrey Hayden, City Attorney. A copy of the complete budget is available for inspection in the office of the City Clerk, 220 North 5th Street, Bardstown, Kentucky, from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday.
All right, thank you, Audrey. I would just like to say, I'm not going to read the entire letter that accompanies this budget, but I would like to just highlight some things. Since this is just the first reading, we'll do a second reading and fully adopt this budget at our next meeting. But you know, as you know, the balance this year's fourth quarter was greatly impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak, and then of course that's carrying over into our budget fiscal year 21. So we don't know what the future impact is. It going to be exactly. It's kind of difficult. It's hard to reliably predict what's going to happen. But with your all's help and that of Aaron and the department heads, I feel like we're presenting, or I'm presenting to you all for a vote, you know, as conservative of a budget that we can. And it's an interim budget. As I said earlier, we would want to revisit this after the first of the year and see what the trends are. If we could perhaps make some positive adjustments, certainly we will. And obviously, if the trends are worse than we think, we'll have to make some adjustments in the other direction. But I do think we're conservative enough that it should be better than we're forecasting right now. This budget reflects the anticipated reductions that we are predicting for the general fund, the combined utility fund revenue. Before you all got the budget, Aaron and I made cuts of about $1.2 million from what was presented to us from the department heads in order to get the budget balanced when we presented it to the council. And kind of the highlight, one of the major things that happened is the legislators froze the pension contributions at the rates for fiscal year 21 as they are for fiscal year 20. While that's good news for now, that will probably be bad news in coming years, but that had a positive impact on us. However, as Aaron just reported, our trends for our insurance in this current fiscal year, that is also going to impact us next year, which we are predicting a 25% increase of our health insurance, which is about a $1.6 million line item on fiscal year 21's budget. On a more positive note, as we talked about last week, we were told by Department of Local Government that we're eligible for $946,000 worth of funds from the CARES Act for COVID-19 related expenses that start in March of 2020 and go through December of 2020. So that will have a great positive help on our, particularly in the general funds in this fiscal year 21 budget. We have a really strong cash position of $23,600,000 and certainly a very strong balance sheet with $98 million in assets there. The fiscal year 21 budget consists of $56,742,465,000. That's revenues, which is a decrease of $72,252,685 from fiscal year 20. And then $58,788,336 in expenses, which is a decrease of $3,260,000. Obviously, the difference there between the revenue and expenses will be made up with our unrestricted reserves. Thus, the budget will be balanced. And finally, just to highlight the new budget, fiscal year 21 has $12 million worth of capital expenditures and improvements here in Bardstown for our infrastructure and also services and projects that are needed internally. So it's $7 million below fiscal year 20's budget total. So that's quite a decrease going forward. So just wanted to summarize the letter that you all received introducing this new budget. So first reading, so we won't have a vote on that. We'll move on then to the CARES Act Small Business Relief Fund. We told you that we were notified by DLG that we had these funds available. In checking with DLG, we also found out that some of these funds could be used for grant projects for small business relief, like we did originally. As Aaron told you, we were able to apply for reimbursement for the $65,000 we put towards that first grant program, which we have been approved. We haven't got the money yet, but we have been approved for that reimbursement. In talking with Judge Watts, they are in receipt of the same notification for a substantial amount of funds. And if you saw their minutes from their last meeting, the judge and I are recommending to both fiscal court and city council that we appropriate $150,000 each for a phase 2 grant program, which will be available countywide, but also the emphasis would be first to reward those businesses that did not get any funds in the first round or did not apply or weren't eligible. Obviously, small businesses out in the county were not eligible then, but would be eligible on this. They had not officially voted on that. They did have some discussion. The judge feels like they are favorable, but I would like to ask for a commitment from you all this evening to allocate $140,000 of the CARES Act funds that have been, we've received clarification from DLG that they can be used for this program. And then of course the $10,000 that we got recently from another business, local business, for that purpose. And I guess the motion would be that the funds would be used either in partnership with the fiscal courts, same matching funds for a countywide program, or they would be used just for city businesses in the event that the county did not decide to participate. I don't know, Audrey, if that, I see you looking kind of quizzical there. If we can make a motion that has kind of, is it two-sided or?
Well, I think we can do it that way. I mean, I don't think that we're necessarily bound to only spend the money on businesses within the city. It just has to be for a public purpose that would serve, taxpayers within the city. So certainly continuation of businesses both within and outside the city limits, I think meets that criteria. I think the motion could include in the alternative, should the fiscal court not agree to match our funds, that we could just, continue our own program. If that's, I think that motion could be made that way.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So before you formalize that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Where we kind of came up with this number, just so you know, we did as you remember, we did 95 businesses the first time around. Some applied that weren't eligible. That was about 14 total. But we also know a number of businesses did not, even though they had 2 weeks to apply, they didn't get their applications in on time, or some just didn't apply, period. We think with the county, there's not a huge amount of businesses that were forced to close outside the city limits. And again, that would be the criteria for the award, would be businesses that were forced to close due to COVID or had their operations greatly impacted, such as the restaurants and a few other businesses that could only partially open, and currently they're still greatly impacted. So as the judge and I talked, we thought perhaps the first go around we had awards up to $2,000. We thought that perhaps the second go around, obviously I think we'd have at least 95 to 100 here in town and perhaps another 50 out in the county. So just doing some rough math, we felt like if we had 150 applicants that were all eligible, 300,000 would allow grants of $2,000 each. Or if more than that came in, we could have the committee allocate them, on a basis like we did last time, which had to do with the number of employees and their annual revenue. So same criteria would be used. Obviously, the county fiscal court would add some members to our review committee to review all the applications before the recommendations would be made to both the city and the county for use of these funds. And then we would put together a formal ordinance and so forth, which would probably come after July 1 for the use of these funds like we did the last time. So I'll be happy to have any comments or questions or concerns that you all might have to use this amount of money of the $946,000 we're eligible for.
Mayor, I have a question. Would all
Yes,
the
sir.
applications go to Aaron, or would he be working in conjunction with someone else?
All of them would come to City Hall. I think the judge wants us to probably handle the administrative side of receiving them and so forth. Then the committee reviews them, and then they make a recommendation back to myself and Judge Watts on the allocation of the funds.
Mayor, I have a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I assume we would do the same criteria. It would be for any businesses whose receipts were less than $1 million.
That's correct.
Okay.
Same criteria we used the first time around, because the DOG does specify that these funds are for small businesses.
Okay.
They can't be eligible for, multi-million-dollar sales companies and that sort of thing.
Okay. And then can I offer a suggestion? Since we know we had one lost application, maybe when people turn them in at City Hall, that they get some type of receipt as to it being received at City Hall?
Well, I guess we could, but it's like any other application process. You have a time period to hand deliver them, mail them, and all that. I guess I would leave that up to Aaron to see how much more work that's going to put on Aaron to do that. Aaron,
that would be doable. I just have to get all the PSRs involved to make sure that they got the receipts available. So, but
Well, and just because we know we had one legitimate business that dropped it off and it wasn't received, so just want to make sure we take care of everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other questions? If not, I would ask for a motion then to approve the commitment of up to $150,000. $140,000 of that would be from the CARES Act funds that we received, and $10,000 would be contribution we have received for this purpose of small business grants. We would do this either in partnership with a match from fiscal court, which would be a countywide grant program, or in the event that the county decides not to participate, we would just continue with this money going towards the same small business grant program we did earlier.
So move, Mayor.
All right, is that
Second,
by
Mayor.
Councilman Williams and second by Councilman Jones? Audrey, is that the proper version of the motion?
I think so, Mayor. And
All right,
especially
thank
if we're going to follow up with an ordinance, I think that'll clarify, right, how we're handling it. So,
Correct. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I'm gonna call out individual votes on this. All in favor would signify by saying aye, starting with Councilman Dones,
Aye.
Councilman Shekels,
Aye.
Councilman Williams,
Aye.
Councilman Buckman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hart,
Aye.
and Councilman Dones.
Councilman Hibbs.
Oh, excuse me, Councilman Hibbs, I'm sorry.
Aye.
It's not Chicago. We don't vote early and vote often.
No vote twice.
All right, thank you all. Motion's carried, and I think our fiscal court partners, I hope, will be joining us in this effort, because still a lot of businesses are not completely open, and while the money was helpful, I'm sure it didn't get them completely out of the hole that they were in for being closed for so long. The last thing tonight is my update. I don't have a lot to talk about this evening. We did have 2 new COVID cases today. That would be number 46 and 47. One is in the hospital. 5 are quarantined at home. 4 have recovered, and of course, we've had 1 death. And so the numbers are not skyrocketing, but we are still getting cases each and every week. Some news, good news I'd like to report on is I got some feedback both from some of the council members and people in the community, and also talked with Daniel Jeffries, our recreation director, and we made a decision last Friday to put the basketball rims back up on the courts at the Woodson Rogers Park on South 4th Street, and also the community park up on Halstead and Allison. So they're back up. We felt like that the 5-on-5 meets the criteria of groups not exceeding 10, and groups of 10 or more could be on the side waiting to play. And we advised them of still practicing the social distancing when possible and so forth. But we just felt like that the young people in the community really were desperate for some activities that they could do. And this was one way we felt like we could help them have some things to do that we don't feel like the health risks there are as significant as other things. And of course, a lot of the juvenile sports are going to be opening up, I think, next week anyway. So we felt like that was okay. So we decided to go on and do that. I did hear you all talk about some of the blessing boxes have been well received, and I'm happy to hear that. But we do have one, I think, that's been getting vandalized up near Guthrie Drive, and so we are going to be looking for a new location before we send that back to Fred Hagan for the repairs. Sorry to hear about this vandalism, but Bill or Betty, could you tell me, was it 3 times that box has been vandalized since we put it up?
Yes, sir.
3
3
times.
times.
All right. So the other ones, I think you all reported, because you all are checking on those weekly basis, or maybe even more often than that, they've been well received, I think.
They definitely have.
Well, that's good to hear. And thank all of you all for your upkeep and your keep an eye on these boxes as well. The last thing I want to talk about is another, I think, a very positive thing for our community is last Thursday we put together a meeting. I was joined by Councilwoman Hart, Councilman Councilman Williams, and Councilman Shekels, and Chief Kressig, and Major Joe Seeley, and Sheriff Raymond Pinarona, and 2 of his deputies, along with Mary Spalding from the Human Rights Commission. And we met with the organizers of the protests that were planned for last weekend. And it was really, really a good meeting. Each of us shared our ideas and concerns. And the best part about it is after all this, we had a good discussion that lasted nearly 2 hours. And at the end of the discussion, I think we're on the same page, and the organizers were adamant that, you know, their plans were to have a peaceful, organized protest. We had the times set for those protests. The police and the sheriff's department committed to providing security to help them get from their, there was a walk and then there was a motorcade, the two different, to help provide security and safety for the march, as well as the motorcade that was held later on Saturday afternoon. So, and I think for the feedback I got from people who participated, I think all the council members, along with myself, were at either one or both of those events, at least partly for those events. The feedback was really great. And I think the community as a whole should be proud of how the events were held. And I'm very proud of the efforts on the part of our police department as well as our sheriff department, and then the council members who assisted me in this discussion. So thank all of you all. You know, the effort really paid dividends, and I'm really proud of the community and happy that it turned out the way that it did. I don't know if anybody else would like to talk to that point, but that was a great feeling Saturday afternoon when these events were winding up. Okay. Well,
Mayor, I think on your behalf, I think that you should be getting a lot of recognition for the effort that you put forth and kind of going out on a limb to a point, but also diffusing a lot of the situation that it could have been. And great praise goes to you also for the help that you played, the role you played in help diffusing a situation, and also contributing to the support from the city, along with our council and the police department too. That was kudos to you for your effort in this process. Also, it was very well received, and we got a lot of good positive feedback on your behalf also.
well, thank you, Bill. And, you know, I think we all learned that with good communication and clear communication and planning, it doesn't matter whether it's these kind of events or others, it just goes a long way to have things go correctly. And without the communication and coordination and cooperation by people, that's when you do typically have problems. And that's not just in efforts where community people are active in a cause like this one, or in our everyday business here at City Hall. The better the communication, the better things go, and the better we are able to provide the services that people are looking to us to provide. So thank you. And thank all of you all for being part of that effort last weekend. So if nothing else, I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Mayor.
I get to do that.
Motion by Councilman Buckman and a second by Councilman Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you all and have a good evening.